how would you like to achieve the first million? And today we have Noah, the founder of Wealth Drive. So Noah, tell us, what are the 5 steps to achieve your first million?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
So I have a list of 26 what I call actions for abundance that are available online, but maybe to give you a handful of them that I think would be real powerful for your audience. The first I would say is to invest in yourself and ensuring that you're getting education and training. It could be formal, it could be informal. It could be things as simple as, getting a nutritious meal versus grabbing fast food, but find ways that you can invest in yourself. You want me to keep going? I'll rattle them off.
Yes, keep going. It's step number 2. Okay, that's step number 1. Which one is the second one?
How about spending less than you make? I think no matter what your income is,
Brilliant.
You've got to find ways to spend less than you're earning. Because if you don't figure out that formula, it doesn't matter how much money you make. And I've seen people that make millions of dollars and yet they still don't have enough to save. And it's really shocking when you see it. Get back to people quickly. It's a rule that I find all successful people, or rather, I should say, all responsive people are successful. And so you may not naturally be responsive, but if you can figure out how to get back to people quickly, that's going to help accelerate you towards that million. Not everyone that's wealthy is responsive, but all responsive people get wealthy. I'd also say that you want to build your network. So whether it's, coming on a podcast like this and meeting somebody new and getting exposed to their audience, it could be something as simple as just talking to your neighbors, but figure out ways that you can start building your network so that you can leverage that to help other people, not only to help yourself, but to help others. And then another one would be to take intelligent risks. So if we don't take risks in our life, it's unlikely we're going to have the ability to accumulate a significant net worth. And so what you want to do is take calculated and measured risks that you can learn from. And so either there'll be successful risks that will pay off, or you may have failure in what you've attempted to do, but the value you get is the life lesson and the learning.
Yeah. So, no, I want to talk about one of the steps that you share with us, which is spending less than how much you make, right? So sometime in business, people, when they start the business, they start to develop the product and they invest a lot in the product, and they haven't even sold it yet. And then now they go out and trying to find funding. How do you see this approach, and how and can you expand a little bit more about on this?
Sure. Yeah, I think to your point of those of you that are listening that have your business idea and you're excited about it and you want to invest in that business idea, I've learned the hard way, and unfortunately had to learn the message more than once, that it's critical to sell your idea to others. And the sooner you could sell that idea to others with the lowest investment amount, the better off you're going to be. The best way to do that is through pre-sales. So Kickstarter has become a wonderful platform for people to sell physical products before they create them. But that's not the only way that you can get customers before your business is fully developed. You can ask for deposits from potential customers. You could ask people to buy a gift certificate to your future business. You can ask them if they might prepay and you'll deliver it in the future. No matter what your product or service is, figure out ways that you can sell it first and then go ahead and build it. Maybe run test advertising if you plan to use digital marketing. Go ahead and put up, your book cover. If you think you're going to get rich selling a book, put that book cover up on Facebook, promote it with some marketing dollars, and wait for people to see how many of them actually click on that link and end up ordering the book. And after they order, you could say, I'm sorry, the book's not available yet. We didn't run your credit card. But figure out how many people are willing to put that credit card information in. And if we're just in general focused on those of you that are looking to get your first million, maybe you're working you had a W-2 job, you're an employee somewhere. What you really want to figure out is how can you reduce your expenses to be below your income, or how can you accelerate your income so that you could be more valuable in the marketplace? And therefore, if you keep your expenses the same, your income's going to jump up. And when I was younger, the kind of first thing I did with my wife, we got married young. We had the good privilege of meeting when we were teenagers, and she started her career as a school teacher, and I started my career in accounting. And because we wanted her to become a stay-at-home mom at some point in the future when we had kids, what we did is we tried to get to a point where we'd save 100% of her income. And it took us a couple of years, but by the time we were about 4 years into our career, we were able to just live off my income, save 100% of her income. And so when she left the workforce to become a homemaker, we didn't skip a beat.
So let's talk then about property, right? So this is a property. One out of five, 1 out of 6 people that attended to this broadcast, 5 Steps How to Make Your First Million, they're involved in property somehow. Do you think that property is a good vehicle to become a millionaire, and why?
So I invested in my first piece of investment real estate when I was 23 years old. My wife and I bought a 2-family home. We got paid $40 at the closing, so we did no money down. And we lived in half and we rented half. And now that it's 25 years later, we bought that right at the turn of the century. I've done over 50 acquisitions of properties valued at almost $1 billion. So I'm a real lover of real estate. At the peak, I had about 6,000 apartment units that I owned. That's down now to about 2,500 at the present time. But I believe that real estate is a great asset class. If you want, you could download a free ebook of mine at talkaboutre.com. If you want to learn how I've been investing in apartments to generate what I call infinite returns. And this is a strategy that maybe other people have talked about on your show, which is sometimes called BRRR, where you're buying, you're renovating, you're renting, and then you're refinancing. And through that process, oftentimes you're able to get all the money out that you put into the building, and you still own the building and you're still getting cash flow. And that's really one of my favorite hacks to becoming wealthy.
My first business was in property. We were doing something in London, rent to rent. We managed to sell over 5 million doing this. So I agree with you that property is one of the most easiest vehicles for people to become a millionaire. Now, but sometimes when you get it wrong in property, it's expensive, yeah. But I always said that being an entrepreneur is a skill. The more you practice, the better. So, how you manage adversity? I think at the beginning you bought the house, you rent a half, you were living in the other half. That was when you were very young, and then you start to do this deal. But so how you manage when something went wrong, and how you become adversity?
Yeah. So
how you get back in your feet again, because you see this lesson, if you are a property entrepreneur, somehow it's coming to you no matter what. So at some way in the journey, you're gonna miscalculate or make a mistake in the due diligence, and wow, the hard lesson comes there, and is usually very expensive, right?
If you don't fail, you're probably not taking enough risk. Mm-hmm. And so, I think failure is inevitable. If you're getting up to bat, you're going to strike out. Hopefully you're hitting singles and doubles and maybe the occasional home run, but you're going to strike out also. And so one of the things I think is critical when you are starting out is to know what it is you're risking. And, our country in America, where I'm from, there is a great bankruptcy rule. So, even people that go bankrupt can become president in the United States of America. And so I think it's a result of the culture that we've established that says we want Americans to take risks. We want them to put it all on the line. Now, what happened for me as time went on, I decided I don't want to put it all on the line. I've had too many friends that lost it all and had to start from scratch. And one of the things that I promised to my wife in our relationship, because she's very conservative and she'd really prefer that we bury cans of cash in our backyard, so I'm out taking all these business risks. And actually just today, she asked me, I got a $100,000 kind of came out of nowhere. And she says, can we bury that in the backyard? I said, well, don't worry, honey, it's fine. And so I think you want to know what it is you're risking, the consequence of failure. And so as you build your net worth, once you get to that million, you want to start thinking about, okay, how do I protect my assets so that a failure in one area doesn't spill over into another area? And also what I like to say is I use an opportunity filter. So I'll look at a new opportunity, a risk that I'm taking. I want to measure what my return on investment is going to be. I also want to look at my return on time. How many hours might I have to invest in order to get the outcome I'm looking for? But what I also want to ensure is that failure will not result in me, losing my economic and financial security.
So then, Noah, let's talk about the strategy about buy and refurbish, rent, and refinance, because all property strategies don't work always in all locations. So how do you find that this strategy work in your location, and how do you spot this opportunity? And if this strategy is available also today, or it depends on what part of the United States, what people should be looking at if they want to start to do this model? Definitely hire a mentor like you. That will help, right?
I think it always can work. And so there's better times in the market cycle and worse times in different market cycles. There's better geographies to invest in and worse geographies to invest in. But the best part of that strategy is also called value add. It's a value add strategy where no matter what's happening in the marketplace, you're improving the value of an asset because of the work you're putting in. And so even if maybe the rents don't go up as much as you expected, or the values come down because of interest rates going up, as long as you're creating value, you have a higher probability of success. And that's not to say it's foolproof. I did have in this kind of COVID period, I bought a few assets that unfortunately I financed them with variable rate financing. The costs of my mortgage doubled. The result of COVID were the president installed a policy where I couldn't kick out my tenants even if they didn't pay. And so I had tenants that weren't paying, a mortgage that doubled, and I ended up losing a few properties. And again, that is to show you that even someone like me that's experienced, that's done a lot of real estate investing, it doesn't mean that every acquisition is foolproof. It depends on what risks you're taking going in and what the rewards are going to be coming out.
So then, but again, how you structure this business so something like this doesn't collapse your all all your wealth, because sometimes you get dragged for trying to save few properties. You start to pull out from assets that they are producing, and now the small problem become a big problem. How you protect yourself?
So I did that. I had, let's just say I had a $200,000 investment of my own capital in a building, but I had $4 million of my friends and family. And then when there was a problem, I wanted to try and save it. And so I ended up putting, $1 million into this project and $1 million into that project. And the reason I was doing it is because I didn't want to ask my investors to put in that money, because I felt like it was my problem to try and deal with. And so I was kind of pouring my own money into these deals. And unfortunately, I lost all that money. But the good news, the great blessing that I have is that, again, I have an asset protection plan. So if the bank says, I didn't get enough money and you guys still owe me more money, they're not going to get it from me. They're not going to get it from my investors because of the way the deal was structured. And even though it was millions of dollars, it still didn't impact, where I was going on vacation or the clothes I was buying, right? So I think everybody's got to size their risks appropriately and recognize that you're not going to always succeed in everything you do, especially if you're starting a new business. Only 4% of businesses get to $1 million in revenue. Only half of businesses, I think, survive 5 years, and maybe it's only 25% that ever survive 10 years. So even a good idea, it's hard to make it work in the long run. So you've got to make sure you've got, all of the ducks in a row that you need to have confidence and put you on the right track to getting your first million.
And no, these big projects that you require investment, this is now a big development, right? You're talking about a block of flats where a lot of people are they are investors, and then the deal is structured that they get a return. Is that correct?
Yes, and I was doing that. Because as I mentioned, I started with this 2-family house. Then my wife and I bought another 2-family house. Then we bought another 3-family house. And what I realized for me was that I was mentioning before a return on time calculation. So it ended up that probably one night a week I had to deal with a tenant issue. Maybe one day on the weekend I was dealing with a tenant issue. And so at the end of the year, when I looked at my investment returns, I was pretty happy because I was generating, let's say, about a 14% return on my investment. But then when I looked at how much time I had put in and I multiplied the time by my hourly rate at my job, my investment returns, all of a sudden they went from 14% down to almost nothing. And so I said, maybe I'm in the wrong business. How do I leverage my skill set, my network, my interest, and my capabilities? And what I decided was, after the great financial recession, instead of buying assets on my own, I was going to pool money with other people. And despite having some recent failure, I had a 12-year stretch where I made money hand over fist. And it was, great times in a bull market in what I was buying, which was C-class, value add multifamily in the Southeast.
But this is this is a buildings or a property portfolios.
Buildings. Large buildings. 100-unit apartment complexes, 200 units. The largest one was about 700 units.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah.
Wow. And you guys go in and refurbish everything, refinance, and oh my God.
Yeah. So instead of doing them one at a time, and my conversation with our investors was, they were considering, should I put $50,000 as a down payment on a $200,000 condo and then renovate it and refinance it? Or should I give 50 grand to Noah and his team and let them do everything and let me focus on my job, let me focus on where I'm making money and what I'm good at? And that's the role that we played for them. And thankfully, over time, our investors made a lot of money. And unfortunately, in some deals, they lost it all.
Yeah. So then, so what, but how you did the first one? Because when you go to do a first one, everything is start from the first one, right? Because, okay, you're doing this with the houses, yeah? But now going to commercial property with several units, now it requires different skill set, requires different experience. So how you did the first one?
Yeah, so I started where I was buying them myself, as I mentioned, and even the first one,
yourself?
I didn't have to put any money down. So the first kind of 2-family house that my wife and I lived in, it was $232,000 that we had to pay for it. It was brand new. I got the seller to give us a $7,000 concession. And at the time, there was a 3% down mortgage product. And so I put down the 3%, but at closing, I got a $7,000 closing credit, which covered my down payment. And so I was able to basically, essentially buy with nothing. The second home, I used a line of credit on the first home to make my down payment on the second home. Then the second home, I had the rental income. Then we bought the third home using the lines of credit off of the two of them. And so there's always a way to get started if you're creative. If you don't have the capital yourself, but you have the drive, people are going to notice who you are. And that's, again, one of those reasons to build your network. Because if you don't have the capital, but you've got the stamina and you've got the drive, well, you're going to find someone in your network that's going to want to give you their capital because they want your hustle working for them. And you just use that. And for me, after the great financial recession, when I decided to get into larger commercial properties, I basically found a partner who was already in that business. And I said, hey, if I bring you $1 million, can you give me a percentage of the deal? That's it, of the rewards that you'll get as the deal maker. And so I went around to my friends and family and I said, hey, I've been investing in real estate. This is how I'm doing it now. What do you think about putting 50 grand or 100 grand in? And I was able to put $1 million together and get myself an interest in a big commercial building.
Wow. So I think that when you go to commercial, right? Now again, no new skill set need to be learned because the way that you invest in the houses and you get the cash flow for the houses and everything is completely different than how you operate. Doing a bidding and doing so. How because now you need to work with largest teams, with largest budgets, and you have to make sure that the value is there, so you can refinance and then buy another big unit, right? Yes, and again when the banks are always looking at to give you some money, like if you have done it before, correct? So how you overcome all these
through partnerships. I try not to accomplish anything on my own. I always find that I'd rather have, instead of 100% of a grape, I'd rather have 10% of a watermelon. And so that time and time again in my life, I found people that I could surround myself with that valued the skills and abilities that I brought to the table. And they had certain experiences and business acumen and networks that they could use and complement with my skill set. So in the real estate business, I'm what's known as a capital raiser. I'm somebody that aggregates capital. So I'm the one collecting checks from people, and then I'm partnering with operators. So I probably partnered with, 24 operators, people that every day they're out looking at property, they're changing toilets, they're, giving tenants tours, or they'd rather have teams of people that are doing that on their behalf. But that's their focus, is operating a multifamily asset. Whereas my expertise is in understanding the economics of a deal, describing that to a potential investor, and bringing those investors into the deal.
Yeah. And then but when you said, predictable income is very predictable because at the end of the day, people need to live on those flats. Is that correct?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So whatever the asset is there, is producing that income. The other thing that I always talk about in this podcast is the following. You see, it's a common mistake or lack of planning that we see in entrepreneurs, where you see they have one business, okay? Now the business is making money. They take all this money, they reinvest in the business, they make more money, they take all this money, they reinvest in the business. You already shared with us that you see no large percentage of the business lasts over 10 years because of technology advances or disruption in the market or COVID or you name it, or credit crunch, or however, a very good way of doing things is your business is making money. You take this money, you buy a property, you rent it, the money for rent, you use it for marketing. Whatever happened to the business, it doesn't matter. You have your asset there. And this podcast, we want people to be rich or wealthy, happy and healthy. And sometimes the financial if you have financial difficulties, you see this can generate stress, and all these negative emotion can end up in physical emotion, and people can end up with heart attack, cancer, you name it. So do you how you what is your message for the entrepreneurs, right? That without knowing, they think that the business is going to change the world. They're so passionate about the business, they're so in love with it, that they don't see really that in some cases the business allows you could be but there is only few Apples and Microsoft out there, that you have to number one, exactly what you said, plan the way you're gonna manage your assets. So when not only when good time, but also when bad times come, because there are two things. And even in this podcast, we always talk about how to make the first million. We talk very little about how to keep it, and this is as well as important how to make it, even more important. So no, what message do you have for the entrepreneurs that sometimes they miss this part of the equation, which is key in order for you to don't start all over again? Yes, I know that you can. I know that if today I remove all your money, and I take off your money, and I tell you, I take everything from you, I know that you can build a multi-million pound business again, actually very quickly. But you see, it's hard work, and you already have done this work. So what's the point to work double?
Well, I always say you want to concentrate to create and diversify to protect. So when you're working on your first million, typically you're going to want to, spend your nights and weekends, put all of your energy, all of your resources, everything you can into that one vehicle that's helping you generate income and wealth. And when you get to a certain point in your life, you want to start diversifying to protect it. One of the great pieces of advice you gave is, hey, take some money out for down payment to buy a rental property. That typically works out to be a very good idea. I have there's very few people that own a lot of real estate and don't have any wealth. So the more real estate you could accumulate over your lifetime, the better. But there's other ways to do it as well. And it's figuring out, where do you want to plant your seeds that you can water them so they can grow? And how do you divide your time and your resources between the economic engine that's growing at its fastest and these other things that you may be doing that are kind of for safekeeping. And some people talk about having a barbell risk strategy, where you have a lot of low risk assets and you have your one significant high risk asset. I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs, as you're trying to accumulate that million, what you want to do is figure out, how do you get to 6 months worth of expenses sitting in cash equivalents, CDs, money market accounts, maybe some fixed income, depending on how much 6 months is for you. But once you've got that, 50 grand saved up or 100 grand saved up, well, now over the next year or 2 years, how do you get another 50 grand that you could pull out of the business and maybe invest it, whether it's a piece of real estate, whether it's another investment that you're very excited about? That's low risk. I think too often I find entrepreneurs that are taking all this risk in their business, and then they want to take money out of their risky business and put it into risky cryptocurrencies. Well, now you're probably diversifying into something you don't really know as much about as the business that you're running. You're better off keeping it in the business and investing in the business. And if you can't generate your best returns investing in your business, you're probably in the wrong business.
Yeah. And I think that I'm glad that you touched this about the cryptocurrency, because a lot of time, and that's why real estate is so powerful, because I think something is easy to understand. We all live in houses, we all pay rent, right? So we understand the mechanics. So the other day, a woman over 60 years old, friend of mine, it was he was coming to me, Harry, help me. You see, I invest in this crypto, and then the money doesn't appear in the wallet. And I'm telling to my friend, uh, why you invest in something that is not you don't understand it. You cannot even operate this. This is a highly tech. I used to wear a software developer, and it still is. It's challenging for me to transfer something in these electronic wallets and things like that. Yeah, so complex. I don't want to know about it. And then if you lose this code, you lose this wallet, you don't have access. Too much for me, right? Because you do need to understand when you're investing what is the risk, and you need to understand the investment itself. And I think that out there we all want to. A lot of people want to get the money fast, and they listen to the story without there is you see it has to make sense behind. It's not like you buy this asset, okay, this asset is going to produce X amount of income if that makes sense. And if it's physical, if it's tangible, if you go I can see it like a property that you know where it is. Yeah. So but again, no, do you have any property investors in your family, any friend, any book, a TV show? How you got this mindset from so young? When I was your age, I couldn't have this mindset because I have too much party.
Well, I grew up with a single mom.
How you create this very young age that discipline? Okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna save 100% one full salary, and we're gonna reduce our expenses. When you're young, you want to go on holiday, you want to travel the world, you want to have fun, you want to go and dance. All this is expensive, right? So how you took discussion decisions that okay, we're gonna structure our life financially in a way that is positive for us. So we go to work because we want to, not because we have to, which is a very different approach, right? So from where do you get this inspiration?
So I had my mother was a single mom raising 3 kids. She always worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3.
Wow.
And I always knew when it was payday. And she never had enough money. And, partly it was the experience of seeing how she lived. And in contrast, my father's a CPA. I'm a 3rd generation CPA, and he had his own small business. And like many entrepreneurs, he had good years and bad years. But when we would go out to dinner, I could always order dessert. Or when it was raining on the weekends, we might go bowling and then to the movies. And so as a little kid, I knew right away that having more money meant having more choices. And so it ingrained in me this strong desire to become financially independent, to be able to give myself those choices that I saw my father had. And I started reading books when I was young. I started investing in the stock market when I was 9.
Wow. When you were 9 years old?
Yeah, 9 years old. I bought my first stock. And I was always a hustler. I was selling candy outside of school, and I was shoveling snow, and I was babysitting, and, always trying to find a way to make a buck and then invest it. I didn't want to spend it. I wanted to invest it because I knew that if I delayed my gratification, then I'd be able to have more later on.
But how you knew so young? How can you knew so young? Because you don't have any reference from your dad and your mom. I mean, my parents are teachers, so all what I hear in my house was, you need to go to university and you're going to do well in life. So I went to university, spent 5 years, I got a degree, I give it to them, they're very happy. I never exercised, I got a degree in chemical engineer for nothing because I never exercised as a chemical engineer, but apparently made them very happy that I give this piece of paper to them because they thought that this is, they didn't know any better. Everybody is an employee in my family, honestly, my grandpa was an entrepreneur, but he died when I was a kid, very young, so I couldn't I find out after, you know what I mean? So I don't have any reference from anybody in my family that there is another way that we can generate income rather to having a job. There is no reference. Nobody taught me. And in the same with you, I think you couldn't. So from your from your family, for what you see around your dad. Okay, your dad is an entrepreneur. Have a small business.
Right. He was self-employed, right?
That like a
When we lived in,
self-employed. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
that cash flow.
You create your own job for yourself, and or sometimes you call it the business, but it's not really a reference how to create leverage. So what happened? This inspiration? I know you were hustler. You want to make a little bit of money, and that's it. But how? Where do you? Who told you to learn those books, to consume this content? Do you have any friend? Do you watch a TV show?
So I
One book
read,
led to the other one.
yeah,
What really
Think and
happened
Grow
between
Rich, right? I read that
about
when I
this?
was 13, and Think and Grow Rich, that was as a young
Oh
teenager. I
wow,
was
great!
a great book, and that talked about,
Anyone
building.
recommended to you, or just happened to be in a
I don't
loop
even
of the?
remember how it got to me. And then by the time I was graduating college, Rich Dad Poor Dad came out. That was a great book. But I also had the good fortune, despite the fact that my mom was never really financially independent, she had bought a home when my parents got divorced. My dad said, please, take this money and buy a house. Don't rent. And that was the best decision because that's the only money she ever had. She refinanced the house, 5 different times to take money out to support her life.
Wow.
But we lived in a nice neighborhood, and I had a lot of friends whose parents were, the father was a professional and the mom was at home, or the mom was a school teacher and the dad was a lawyer. And I was always inquisitive. I wanted to know, how did you decide to do this? What do you like about it? And, one of my friends' dads owned the largest beer distributor in the state that I grew up in. And he was very successful, and he had a beautiful house and a great beach house and always had the best Mercedes. And so I used to enjoy talking to him and trying to learn from him, because he was a third generation. And my friend now, my peer, is now the fourth generation in that business. And trying to understand, what does it take to have a business that survives. And it was very interesting because they had franchise protections in New Jersey for distributing beer. So it was like a monopoly. And
wow.
And then my father, as an accountant, had clients of all different types. And so often when we'd spend the weekends with my dad, he'd always share stories on the weekends about the people he was working with and what they did to make money. And he was one of the pioneers of forensic accounting. And so he would testify in court about disputes over money. And so often on a weekend, he would give us one of the cases he was working on for the week. Hey, I have got these two brothers. They inherited their business from mom and dad. And here's, one's the CEO and one stays at home. And, the CEO decided he's going to pay himself $500,000. And that way, at the end of the year, there were no profits for the brother at home to split it. That's right. Should he take the money because he's the one working, or should he get nothing and he gets the same as his brother who sits home, And so we'd have these very interesting.
Wow, this is great. This is great. It's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, we do need to give credit to your dad to, maybe to to ask you guys for help, but without knowing, he was giving a lot of ammunition for you guys to build your future, right? Wow, that's amazing.
I latched onto it. I loved it. I've got 3 other brothers. I think we all absorbed the lessons, but not everybody was that interested, So yeah. I was always very.
So your other brothers, they do have a job, right? Only you turn out to be the entrepreneur.
One works with me, lives in Puerto Rico, and he helped me start a business in Puerto Rico because there's a 4% corporate tax rate there. And so I called him up and said,
the business in Puerto Rico is also property there in Puerto Rico? Buildings?
No, that business is a combination of property and some consulting. We do a lot of specialized tax planning. And so part of the business there is related to the special tax planning that we do. And then I've got another brother involved in commercial real estate, separate from me. He works for someone else. And then my other brother is an acupuncturist, and he helps blind people get their vision.
Wow.
He's got a very, very unique business. People from 50 different countries have come to his office. If they have retinitis pigmentosa, they're all different types of eye diseases. He helps reverse their vision loss.
So basically, wow, so he also has his own business. So it's around,
Right.
because sometimes entrepreneurs we have within ourselves, right? Let's talk about this, yes. Sometimes you have this within you for any reason, for the way that you see, because you see all your brothers saw your mom working as hard, um, but not all decide to become an entrepreneur. So sometimes it's something more individual, it's something inside our DNA that's an entrepreneur, that we knew that we can do it better and we're gonna go for it, whatever it takes.
And one thing to say is hard work doesn't get you your first million.
Absolutely.
A lot of hardworking people out there that never make $1 million. And I think sometimes they look around and say, what am I doing wrong? I'm working hard, but you're working hard at the wrong thing. And you've got to find ways to create value for others that they're going to pay you for. And, you could be the hardest worker in an environment where there's no opportunity for growth. And that's not the right position to put yourself in. You want to be somewhere where you have someone in front of you that's making more money, and you want to make their life easier so that they want to make sure they keep you around.
Yeah. So, Noah, thank you so much. So if somebody want to know more about, I see a lot of books there that you wrote. Yeah. If somebody tell us a little bit more about the books and where people can find those books. Where can they buy it? And
Sure.
Also, if they want to learn more about you, about the series of businesses that you have, with the view into a serial entrepreneur, not only property investor, running a different businesses. So tell us a little bit more about your businesses, about your book, how people can find you, how the process works.
Sure, gladly. Again, my name is Noah Rosenfarb. You could find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. And I put out content about wealth and real estate and lifestyle and how to become what I call rich beyond money. And that's really the philosophy that I've developed over time. And most of the people I work with are 7-figure income and 8-figure net worth entrepreneurs. So they've gone from that 0 to 1, then they've gone from 1 to 10. Many of them have gone from 10 to 20 or 50 or 100. And what they find is that their pursuit of financial success does not lead them to a happy, well, fulfilling life. And so what we try and help them figure out is how do they go from being financially wealthy to being wealthy in the truest sense of the word, what we call rich beyond money, where they have the passive income so they don't have to do work if they don't want to, where they've been able to, create their ideal life so they have a schedule that resonates with them. They're with the people they want to spend time with, and they're not doing things they don't want to do. And maybe most importantly, they're finding ways to find and contribute to their higher purpose. So they're really building their legacy. They're making impacts in their community, in their family, in their, in the sphere of influence that they want to make an impact. And so that's the business I'm in. We do wealth coaching. A lot of it is helping them figure out how to reduce their taxes, because what I find is that for us American entrepreneurs, especially if they're in New York or California, giving half their money to the government, maybe they've made a move like I did to Florida or Texas, and they're giving 35% of their money to the federal government. If we can reduce that number to 0 to 10%, then all of that extra capital they can reinvest for their additional income and accelerate their achievement of financial independence. So that's really the linchpin of what we do, is tax reduction for high income entrepreneurs. And then we lead them into these other areas of how to have a great life. And so one of the most common reasons people reach out to us is because they're selling a business and they recognize, they're going to have this 8-figure exit. And if they don't do anything, they're going to write a big check to the government. So I wrote a book called Exit Rich Beyond Money that talks about, how do you go through that process of selling a business and have a successful outcome. And that's probably, I would say, the most value we can offer to someone is when they're selling their business or they're making a ton of money, they come to us and we show them ways to keep more of their money and have a better life.
And with that note, thank you so much, Noah. That has been fantastic. And for all of you following in our social media and in Apple and Spotify, see you in our next episode of Unstoppable, how brave entrepreneurs like Noah break that wall and achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Thank you, Harry.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.